Luke Kuechly is a player like anything we've ever seen at Boston College. You've seen the Matt Ryans, the Mark Herzligs, the Zay Flowers. Luke Kuechly is a once player, the best defensive player I have ever seen at Boston College. And I think it's pretty safe to say the best one we will ever see in Chestnut Hill. On today's show, we'll talk about his newest accolade that he just picked up. We'll get into what makes him so special. We'll also look at the basketball team and talk a little bit about where their ceiling might be for the rest of this year. And finally, we'll look at the transfer portal, as there's always news to talk about as the portal keeps on churning. All of this and more on today's Locked On BC.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome. This is Locked On BC. I am your host, Jay Black. Happy Tuesday, everyone. If you're listening to this, I'm recording this during the midst of a absolute beatdown in the national championship game. But this is not about to talk about national championship. I'm not doing this as SEO traffic here. I'm here to talk about Luke Kuechly. Boston College linebacker from 2009 to 2011 is heading to the College Football Hall of Fame. And he's doing this off of what was one of the most historic careers to ever go through Chestnut Hill. Luke Kuechly, I'm telling you, I've watched some fun players, whether it's A.J. Dillon, Matt Ryan, even B.J. Raji and Mark Herzlig. At his position, Luke Kuechly was the best Boston College player I've ever seen. And he could go down if any talent around him. Unfortunately, if you're a player from that team, I apologize. There were some tough teams to watch in during that era. He would have been a national story, because what made Luke Kuechly so special was his ability to make plays. He was on pace. He had 560 tackles during his time. He made play after play. All I could watching him play was every time that there was a ball that just went out of, whether it was a running back, on a play or a pass, he just had the instinct to just consistently get to that spot. And it was something I've never seen before. Like, he just instinctually was there, and it was just like boom, boom, boom. And there were plays that he made that turned around games. And I go back to his career finale in Chestnut Hill. And it wasn't a game in Chestnut Hill. It was actually in Coral Gables against Miami. And I think he had 2 interceptions in that game. One of them was a pick 6 off of Ja'Cory Harris to end the game. He's doing it basically with one arm, and he absolutely dominated that game. This is a guy that was averaging, I believe it was something like 13 tackles a game. He was an absolute freak 14 tackles a game, which is number 1 in college football history, which is insane. This guy was an absolute freak. His 2011 season, on a BC team that I believe didn't even make the bowl, was not even bowl eligible. He swept defensive honors, including the Bronco Nagurski Trophy, the Butkus Award, the Rotary Lombardi Trophy, the Lot Impact. If this team was any better, he would have been in the Heisman talk. He would have been like that Sue from Nebraska. He would have been like that kind of player. He had 191 tackles. 102 of them were solos. And then in 2010, he had 183 tackles. You hear the numbers I'm saying? These are like video game numbers this guy threw out there. And the best part of it was this guy was BC through and through. This guy made plays and was a good student. And I love the comparison of Luke Kuechly to Clark Kent. They call him Clark Kent and Superman, because if you ever seen, I remember going to a press conference and meeting Luke Kuechly for the first time. And there he is sitting in front of me with curly hair and glasses. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy looks like just every BC student you see out there. but then he puts on the pads and the guy is a monster. And he does not look like the typical like Ray Lewis or those typical linebackers that you see out there. I had another one and I totally blanked. Oh, Brian Urlacher, those big, like muscly freak guys that just like make plays all over the place. Kuechly was not like that, but he was the Clark Kent and Superman. And unfortunately, he played for a team that just didn't get the recognition that he deserved. I mean, he won every trophy because he was so good. But if he was, if you put him on a good team, I just think of like, what would he have been like if he was on that 2007 or 2008 team? That team would have easily won the ACC. They would have beaten Virginia Tech. They absolutely would have beat Virginia Tech there. But that's just like, that's fantasy booking right there. That's not what happened. But Kuechly, he goes out there, he plays his heart out. He goes to the Carolina Panthers, has a legendary career, retires because of concussions. Can't hate the man for doing that. That's a smart business move right there. When you're starting to get concussions and they're starting to pile up, you got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of your future, your family. He does that. Now he's in scouting. I think he was with the Panthers. I don't know where he was last year. But in the midst of all this, he goes back and finishes his degree at BC because of course he does. The guy is a superhuman. And he's the first BC player to make the College Football Hall of Fame since 2017. And that was Mike Ruth, who was another legendary BC player. So, we probably won't see another player from BC for, you might see someone like AJ Dillon or, I doubt he would make it because Luke Kuechly is going in with guys like, Tim Tebow, Dwight Freeney, some other big time players. This is for the big time players out there. But I have been a fan for Boston College since the early 90s, I would say. And Luke Kuechly was one of the most fun guys to ever watch because every time BC's defense was on the field, you knew he was going to make a play. You knew he would always know what was going on. You wouldn't get beat by a bad play. He was the most consistently good player I've ever seen. And I will stand, folks might say an offensive lineman or a skill player. Kuechly's a freak. And the fact that he did it so under recruited makes it even more impressive because he didn't have huge offers. He's a guy that came from St. Xavier in Ohio, one of the first BC guys to do that. He comes here and he shows why he's a 3-star. This is a 5-star recruit. This was a complete miss by the recruiting services. Luke Kuechly was a legend. It's so cool that he made the Hall of Fame here because I think Canton's the next step for him. He had a shorter career than I'm sure he wanted, but he made his mark in the pros. And we'll talk about his pro career when he gets there on Locked On BC, but this is his college career. And thank you, Luke. What a career you had. Now, in our next segment, I want to talk basketball. We'll look at the basketball team after they lost to Duke. I want to kind of sit back and analyze, where is this team? What accurately, what is this team? What can we expect out of them heading forward? And what are some realistic expectations for BC heading into, the stretch of ACC football? But if you know me, I love my Built Bars. I have a Built Bar every single day as a snack. It gives me a nice replacement when I don't have time to sit down and eat something. Built Bar is healthy. And the best part, it's 100% covered in chocolate. We just got through the holidays. I know my goal is to eat a little healthier this year. And if you're like me, where you want to eat healthier, but you don't want to compromise taste, then man, I've got a thing for you. You've got to try Built Bar. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious you won't think they're good for you. Perfectly good for your New Year's resolution. So I don't know how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And that's what's even better, is that they're healthy for you. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar and a whopping 17 grams of protein. So if you're close to Sam's Clubs, run and grab a 13 bar box right now. With hit flavors like brownie batter and churro, You can thank me later. And if you're on this website, go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15. Again, that's LOCK15 at built.com. This is Locked On BC, and we're talking about BC men's basketball here. We just talked about our friend Luke Kuechly. Love him. He's heading to to College Football Hall of Fame. I don't even know where the College Football Hall of Fame is. Is it an actual thing? I know like the WWE, they have their Hall of Fame, but that's not actually a real thing. I've never heard of anyone going to a College Football Hall of Fame. Whatever it is, even if it's just an honor, it's a cool thing. So Luke Kuechly's heading there. Now, men's basketball lost to Duke on Saturday, 65 game. As I said, they should have won. Down the stretch, they weren't able to hit shots. Duke's defense kicked it up a notch to seal the win, and BC made some costly fouls down the stretch that really kind of hurt the Eagles. So now that now the dust is settled after a couple big games. We saw the Virginia Tech game. We saw the Notre Dame game, Syracuse and Duke. What is this BC team? Is it a team that is as bad as the UNH Maine and Tarleton State game? Is it as good as the win against Virginia Tech? Or is it somewhere in the middle? I argue it's somewhere in the middle. Now, the Virginia Tech win is not looking as strong as it did a couple weeks ago because Virginia Tech just lost their third straight game in a row. So they're sorely, like very quickly out of the top 25. That being said, you just beat Duke or lost to Duke that was only, by a one point game. So I think this BC team is set to make some waves. Now, will they make the tournament, the ACC tournament? I mean, the NCAA tournament? No, they're not going to make the NCAA tournament. That ship has sailed long ago, unless they go on some sort of massive tear. And that would include wins against big Miami. Clemson's playing really well right now. UNC. That's not going to happen. Let's be realistic here, folks. That being said, could this team do enough to the NIT? And that's going to be tough because their KenPom rating is terrible right now. They're at 160 or something like that. To build some wins. And that could start with their game on Wednesday against Miami. Every loss that you take, every UNH, every Maine loss that you lose, you need to balance that with a bigger win. Now, they had the Virginia Tech win. So, as I just said, is not that great. Notre Dame was okay. They need a big time here. They need to beat a team like Miami on the road. And when BC is inconsistent offensively, that's going to make these games harder. Start to feel that they're getting their groove offensively. Against a team like Duke, the fact that you still put up 64 points is pretty good. Duke has a good defensive team. Best, but they're pretty good. You scored decently against Syracuse. You're starting to find a rhythm offensively. You're seeing a lot less of the, just passing it around the perimeter and hoping to God that your bad 3-point shooters are going to hit a 3-point shot, and more of slashing, pushing towards hitting those shots. And I think that is where they're going to find their success. You got a wide body in there like Quentin Post. You're going to do your pick and rolls. You're going to be able to find some screens. You're going to be able to offensively. I think that BC probably is still even a little too far out to be an NIT team. I think that ship has sailed, and we'll get close. As we get closer, we'll look at, how do they match up. They're still a 500 team right now. That's good. That means that they could make it one of those tournaments, but they got to start building some wins. And you can't just start looking at games like Miami and going, well, that's an automatic loss. They're screwed there. They need to get those wins. They need to figure things out. And I get the sense, just like we saw against Duke, with Post back, with him taking those big minutes, BC should be able to have BC right now. The top team in the conference right now is Clemson. And I'm not going to bash on Clemson, a very good player. But, I think they're not a dominant ACC team like we've seen in years past. Like they're a beatable team too. So I like where BC's chances are right now. I think there's some chances for BC to make some noise. And honestly, at the end of the day, with what happened in the out of conference schedule, building some sort of momentum is exactly what you want to see this program do. You want to see them start to, maybe build a couple big wins, play tough against some tougher teams, get themselves around, escape Tuesday in Greensboro, not have to play that opening game. Those are all steps in the right direction. That shows a program making progress. And then next year, you lose Mekhi Ashton Langford, but you return almost that entire team. Quentin Post should be back. DeMar Langford should be back. Jaden Zachary. You're got most of those guys, and your guys are building up. So I think that's what I think is a good ceiling. I honestly don't think the NIT right now is where they're heading. I think they need to show more. They need to show more consistently, and they need to get some more big wins. They haven't done that yet, but we'll have to see where they go. Now, in a moment, I'm going to look at the transfer portal. This is the segment I know a lot of you folks want to talk about, because on yesterday's episode, we talked about Logan Taylor. We're going to talk a little bit more about heading next. If you haven't done so already, if you're listening to this live on YouTube, hit us up in the comment section, but also please like our video. That helps us get massive new eyes on our show. So if you hit like, it's a big help for us. Even if you already are subscribed, just like this video. And also, if you haven't, subscribe to our channel. We're trying to get up to 700 subscribers right now. That's our goal for the next couple of weeks. Help us get. Hit subscribe right now to Locked On BC. You'll get all of our videos, and it helps the podcast out tremendously, and it doesn't cost you a cent. So if you want to do that right now, hit subscribe on Locked On BC on YouTube. All right. So the transfer portal, this is Locked On BC. AJ Black, I'm the editor and publisher of Eagle Insider. The transfer portal has been a good friend of BC this year. Ironically, for a team that had only 10 commitments for 2021 and 2022, BC was up to 8. And this weekend, they had a handful of recruits on campus. They already landed one, as we said on yesterday's show. Go back and listen to it. Logan Taylor, the offensive tackle from UVA, committed to BC. It's a good get. The fans from UVA were pissed that he left, and NC State was bummed they didn't get him. So that's a good sign. Now, Jireh Wilson was another guy that was reportedly on campus this weekend. He is a safety from ECU, a multiple-year starter. And I'm only here to tell you bad news here, folks. He committed to This was a guy I thought BC had a good chance. They needed safety help. They don't have a lot of depth there. This was something that we were hoping to be able to land. I'm not sure what he was looking for, but he's heading to UCF, and that's you can't hate. I am not a guy that bashes a guy for picking another team. So will BC look for another safety? I'm not sure. I haven't heard them connected to any other safeties. Surprised if they kind of wait until after spring practice, see if there's any guys that are out there that maybe come out after the spring games and figure out that they're not on the depth chart. We'll have to wait and see what happens there, but he is not coming to Boston College. He's going to go to UCF. The other news, and just this isn't news, but more of a let's keep an eye on this, is Baishal Tutin, the running back from NC A&T that committed to Boston College. He was on, to me, he put on Instagram over the weekend himself at Blacksburg at Virginia Tech, off of those recruiting pictures with him at the Virginia Tech uniform on and all the different photos that they take every time they go and recruit. So it looked like to me that he was on an official visit to Virginia Tech. That being said, he hasn't announced anything to Virginia Tech. Usually a guy goes down there and it's like less than 24 hours later, he commits. At the time of recording, this is 10 o'clock at night. He is not committed to Virginia Tech yet. That being said, if you following the tea leaves of how Jeff Hafley has dealt with this in the past, I don't think that's a good sign. He's committed to BC and he's taking official visits. I know the coaching staff in the past has not looked very kindly onto that. Now, this could be a different situation. It also could be old pictures. Who the heck knows? Kids just put up stuff. And so, and I haven't seen anything on 247 Virginia Tech site. None of the writers have picked it up. None of the board members have figured it out yet. So I'm not reading too much into this, but it's something worth watching. All of these recruits that we've seen transfer to Boston College have yet to sign yet, because they don't sign until they head onto campus, which is next Tuesday. You won't see BC actually announce these kids probably until the end of this week, when they actually sign their, financial aid paperwork and are officially a member of that university. So this might be one that might have you catching your breath until the end of this, because who knows? As I said, it could be that he was there visiting, which is bad. BC needs running back help, and this kid from NCAA has the pedigree to do some big things. But on the other hand, it could just be he's a not high school kid. He's a first or second year player. We're all adolescents at one point. Maybe he just was being silly and throwing up pictures. His picture on Instagram and Twitter is still him in his BC uniform. He hasn't changed any of that. So we'll have to wait and see. It's something that I think is a situation at least that's worth monitoring until he sends out the infographic. So and Biagel Tootin is signed to BC. We'll have to wait and see this. But we're gonna head out right now. On tomorrow's show, kind of preview the Miami-Boston College game, give you any more transfer news and any other things that pop up over the next couple of days. We'll get everything in between. This is AJ Black. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack_BC or at Locked On BC. Thank you so much for listening. And for everyone who's made Locked On BC part of the routine, thank you as well. You make the biggest difference, and you're the reason why I do this every day. I love having so many loyal listeners that enjoy this. Get out there. Mark Falzone had one really quick comment. BC women's basketball sweeps ACC Weekly honors Dontavia Wagner is Player of the Week. Tana Mayer is Freshman of the Week. And then Jeff Shell has a question I think we'll answer on another. Hi, AJ. How would you letter grade Hafley's transfer portal pickup so far? Are there any moves you think can and will still make? Jeff, I'll get to that on another episode. Thank you much. I'm going to go watch the end of this game. See you soon.